Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special, exciting first episode of the Scholar and the Bard podcast, a Patreon exclusive with yours truly and Eric John Bauberger. Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you today?
I'm awesome. It is a very exciting moment for me for the very first episode of our podcast that's going to cover a lot of topics that we are both interested in. And when we got to know each other, we actually knew that we are going to talk about these topics pertaining to human interaction, consciousness, in relationships, spirituality, self-awareness, self-development. Yeah, so today, our very first topic is social cues, similarly kind of unthreatening, uh, unassuming topic. But do you want to start us off here, Eric?
Yes, I think a good place to start is just with a little fun fact about communication, because I think that's kind of at the core of what we're talking about here, is how people communicate. And supposedly, research shows that like 20% of our communication, or only 20% of our communication, is verbal. The rest of the communication is in my tone, my facial expressions, my energy, my hand gestures, and all these other very subtle signals that can be read. So when I think of social cues, and being able to read somebody or be able to communicate most effectively with somebody, it's going to require the ability to hear beyond the words and see beyond the words, and to recognize how facial expressions and body language contribute to what the person is actually trying to express, or perhaps what they're trying to not express, or what they're trying to conceal and repress.
Yeah, that's a great, at the end, you just went with a throwaway line about trying to conceal what is subliminally actually being actively um, uh, coherent and actually, when you said the vibration, when you talked about vibration and stuff like this, social cues has a lot to do with that. I think with vibration and being able, there's a double speak, when it comes to social cues and interaction. There is something that is implicit, is what you're actually saying with your words, what you utter, and what comes out of your mouth, and what you actually mean. So can you elaborate a little bit about meaning when it comes to interaction and social cues?
And when you say meaning, do you mean, it's funny, like I'm asking you the meaning of what you're saying when you're asking me about meaning.
Yeah.
Are you talking about um, people using certain words or certain ways of articulating what they're saying, and
There's
how
a
that
no,
connects?
I'm actually thinking about, there's there are two types of there are two layers. um initially, very superficially, there are two layers. The dichotomy is twofolds. There's implicit, something that you want to get out of the other person, and there is motive. Why are
Mhm.
you doing and asking that person in a certain way, or trying to persuade the other person using different different elements of communication and persuasion methods.
Yeah, the first thing that I think of is when a person asks somebody else something of them in the example of like I need you to do this for me because I get very anxious when the opposite happens. I'm trying to be very vague so it could be very general, but an attempt from a person to control another person or to influence the other person is typically to satisfy some need within the person asking. So when a person's like, "Oh, I need you to be, more aware of the volume at which you speak because it makes me very anxious," or "I'm very sensitive to the volume of your voice," and what I'm saying is true for me. Sometimes I could be sensitive to someone's volume or the rate at which they speak. But that discomfort that I feel is within me. And my attempt to have this other person dialed down is so that I could feel some relief. So, like, the deeper meaning of my request is so that I could feel more easy. But at the same time, while that other person may be co-creating this sense of uneasiness in me, it's truly a projection coming from me. It's truly my belief or my perception about the loud, fast vibrations of voice. And if I could evaluate that and inquire within myself, like, what is my belief about this volume? Is it true? I could kind of begin to clear how I feel, but then I could also set a boundary if I need. So it's not wrong or out of place to ask something of someone, but to recognize the energy at which it comes from. So if I ask someone to quiet down because I'm coming from this sensitive place, their defense could go up because of the place that I'm coming from. But if I could own that feeling first, clear my own energy, the message at which I transmit to them will be better received because my defense isn't up, right? Because you think about when you're anxious, like your shoulders are tight and your whole energy changes. So to tune yourself first and then communicate, there's a greater chance of it being received.
Yeah, it's not something to be taken lightly. Social cues seem to be like a throwaway term, something that has to do with self-development and actually being able or acquiring different mingling skills. When you have a when you arrive at a party and someone suggests that you do this as opposed to that, or you'll be fashionably late or something along those lines. So there's something to be said about what we hear when someone's speaking and what we see. So can you talk about that kind of disassociativeness of what we see as opposed to what we hear from a person in the context of the social cues?
The first thing that I think about, because I was at a 4th of July backyard little barbecue the other weekend, and there was this one person who's always very nice, but I noticed that when she says hello, it's like very like before she's even done speaking her greeting, she's already like not even looking at you anymore. So it's just an interesting thing where it's like, "Oh, hey, yeah, great to see you," but it's clear that you're just saying hi just to say hi, and you could care less about who you're saying hi to. It's just more so maintaining that social appearance of, "Hey, I'm here, I'm pleasant, I'm glad to see you," you know. And then we didn't say one other word the rest of the gathering. And it was no judgment on my part. I don't know where this person's coming from. I don't know what they're feeling, what else is going on in their life. But it's just something I couldn't help but notice because it was the second time that it happened where I'm like, before she even finishes the greeting, she's already doing something else.
Yeah, there's something to be said, that we have different motives, we have different intentions, we have different goals when it comes to social events or interacting with other people. It has to come from a place, of when you say social cues, there's a stigma about it. When read the room, pick up the
Hmm.
social cues that the other person is giving you, which is, generally it will be correct. The intent matches the mannerisms, the
Hmm.
volume of speech, the pace of speaking. But there's is there a kind of is there a what I'm trying to say is like is there this um, maybe disconnection between people when it comes, even though they have the same attention, is there a disconnection that occurs because of a false or wrong, shall we say, a social cue that is being conveyed as opposed to another?
I think that disconnect comes or is a result of whether or not someone is truly present. And I didn't notice that I was someone who was never present until I finally was able to quiet my mind in a meditation. So I believe that a lot of people, because their mind is either replaying something that just happened or is in anticipation of something and they're not fully present, the rest of them is kind of on autopilot. And you could typically tell when someone is speaking to you, whether it's a greeting or a goodbye or even just kind of general conversation. We're talking very surface level. That's what I'm picturing as very surface level, like not sitting with your best friend or something like that. But when people are again not present, they're on this autopilot, and so what they're conveying or what they're saying, and if someone else isn't fully present, they might not even notice it. But when someone is more present, they'll notice when someone's kind of like autopilot saying the same thing that they normally say at about that time when in that certain situation. And again, the more present you are, the more you could pick up that there's a little disconnect on this moment, or that it just doesn't seem as genuine as it could. And again, that's not to judge the other person, but it's just something that you observe. And what is a social cue but something that you observe?
Yeah, yeah, it's good that you mentioned it because I was thinking about, people build on past experiences. And when they kind of feel the waters, they tippy toe uh, and they sort of try to feel the waters or what's the direction of the wind, the general direction. Um, they're kind of saying, oh, yeah, I know this one. I know this one. So I'm going to A plus B equals Y squared. It becomes like math. It's very schematic. I'm going to go over, the same routine, the same type of shtick. I'm not going to change anything about my script or the way I approach it. So do people actually miss um, meaningful interactions because of actually just conveying a reactionary kind of a response in communication?
Yeah, when someone isn't fully present in a moment, in any given moment, there's so much depth that goes overlooked or that doesn't fully we're experiencing it on some level, like our five senses are always and beyond that are always picking up the vibrations available in this moment. But when our mind is someplace else, it totally affects our experience. And I love giving examples, but another example is, being in a gathering with friends and with my girlfriend. And while I'll be, engaging with certain people, I still like while I am very intentional about being present, sometimes I can't help my creative thoughts that flood into my mind. And so like after a gathering, my girlfriend can be like, "Oh, did you notice like so and so was like acting weird?" I'm like, "No, not at all." But like immediately she observed a behavior difference, or even people on social media. She's like, something's up with this person. They don't normally post like that. And so she's very, very observant of social cues. And while I, again, like pride myself on being very present and in the moment, I'm not paying attention to the same vibrations or the same things that are unfolding as she is.
Yeah, that's great that you mentioned it or brought it up to the surface because, you know, this has something where what I'm thinking about is something that it doesn't have to do with social cues, but it's something that is implicit in what you said, that people have a sort of social responsibility when it comes to interaction with other people. They have to, there's a, it's not something that is obligatory, or mandatory. It's something that has to come within our own um, how I forgot the word. It's called just a sec. Um, our inner feelings. Um, um, I forgot the word for it.
I'm sure it'll come back in as soon as you
Yeah,
stop trying to
sorry.
think about it.
Yeah,
That's okay.
exactly. That's the hard part about it. You know the intuitiveness. So there's something that is intuitive in us, and we use an intuition
Mhm.
to pick up, distress or anxiety in other people. People who are uh, between a rock and a hard place, and we have a sort of social responsibility. Um, but how do you try to approach an interaction with another person, a new person that you've just met? Is there a kind of method that is, carved in stone, or are there different fluctualities, shall we say?
First and foremost, presence. Trying to fully engage my awareness on what this other person is saying and embodying as they speak so I could receive them most clearly and not clutter it with my own perceptions. Um, to because I could speak on many different levels of understanding, so always starting off most general, most simply, most small talkish, if you will. It's like, weather's great outside, and then kind of you feel into the person and you could sense, I guess,
Yeah,
intuitively
once
how deep you could
once
go
you've
with somebody.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like I just wanted to say, like, once you've started talking about the weather, you know that the interaction tends to end there, right then and there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and some people don't go much deeper than that. Um, but uh, but like we were saying, how there's this intuitive awareness of other people. I believe that the energy we're giving off is immediately felt by the other person, which either consciously or subconsciously allows them to share more deeply. So when someone senses that you're a good listener or that you're genuinely tuned into them, they're going to speak more freely and open up and be more real with you. When we sense that someone isn't really listening, our guard is going to kind of be up. And I could think of a few examples of when I've talked to somebody and you could tell that if you don't condense what you're saying or what you're trying to communicate, if you don't really summarize it right away, they immediately begin to lose interest. And that's not because you're not interesting, but because they're not present in and of themselves. So always starting off with presence so you could read the other person and intuitively express from that point, whether you could go deeper, whether you keep it more surface level, whether you need to listen more or speak more. Because there's some people that don't want to listen. Some people just want to talk. And when you realize that you're talking to a talker, you're safer rather than trying to talk over them or like trying to control the conversation, really sitting back, being present, bringing your awareness into your body. And that's a huge thing too that I've learned as a coach that my mentor showed me was when you're listening to someone go into their story, which is vital for them to tune into their thoughts and their emotions. Notice if you're like physically leaning in. If you're physically leaning in, you're getting too caught up in their story, and you want to maintain this posture even and this spatial presence so that you could still have that higher vantage point, not a better vantage point, but see it in its totality. And then you could again you could engage more effectively or and interact more effectively.
Yeah, there are a lot of connotations that like come up in my head once you've said that, because there's a phrase by the great poet, English poet, William Wordsworth, which I can't replicate right now, but it has to do with actually soaking in all the information and then dictating it in post, in quiet, once you're in your kind of a solitude and you're in a thinking space, a clear thinking space, then you can take down those different notes and the interaction. But it's very true. There are people who want to condense a lot of stuff, a lot of information into one interaction because they want to be good salesmen. It reminds me of, I don't know, it's some people associate this phrase with Steve Jobs, but he said something, if he said it, it said something along the lines, you have to market the most important person in your life, which is yourself. Yeah, you have to actually know how to market it. And it's very true when you said you need to take that stance, that vantage point, to disengage a bit with the other person, to be present, but you're trying to nerf the environment around yourselves, because you have to be aware of what is surrounding you, as well as listening to the other person.
Yes.
Yeah. So regarding social cues, are there different ways that we can convey during conversation or interaction, uh, at any capacity? It doesn't matter, at a social event or at a friends meeting, or just on the street, when you sit at a cafe or whatever. Are there different do's and don'ts when it comes to social interaction and actually achieving the results that you want?
That's a great question, and I don't think there's one way to answer it because like in my as I'm listening to you and my the visual part of my mind is flooding with different experiences and different examples of different things. But as far as do's and don'ts, again, I think it all comes back to presence. Like if we're not completely present, then I think we could act or express in a way that isn't as receivable. Um, and I'm thinking of an example when you're in a coffee shop and a stranger drops, their debit card out of their pocket. I think it's a normal thing to pick it up and to hand it to that person and to exchange. I think it's normal when you're in a grocery store if you pass someone and you smile and give a nod or whatever. But some people, they really want to communicate, and some people don't want to be communicated with. So for me, I like to talk, as you could see, and as the listeners can hear. I like to speak, but I tend to reserve myself more and either wait for an opportunity to call me forward to speak or to act, or I just I allow someone else to initiate whatever it is. But there's so many different examples and such a variety. But again, I think it all comes back to being present. So you're really observing, and you could intuitively sense when it's time to do whatever it is you're looking to do. Because I think there's so much criteria to discern what is right or what is wrong, but it really isn't black and white. It's just whether two people are resonant with each other in a given moment, and each moment is different.
Yeah, exactly. When you talk about social cues and actually being able to, um, you know, not being reactionary in a negative way, trying to facilitate um, a naturally developing sort of interaction and communication. So, how do you become more, it's a different topic a bit, but not really. How do you become a little bit more attract, attractive and approachable to the people that you meet through the course of your life?
To say or to respond to the beginning part of what you were saying, talking about reaction, I always think reaction versus response. And recently I heard someone define a reaction as just acting again, meaning you've acted this way before, meaning that a reaction is a programmed, conditioned action, whereas a response is more conscious.
Yeah, which is
It's
not true. The reaction is, at the current state, at the current moment, you
yeah.
react to something that occurred. Yeah.
Yeah, so say you've been in a lot of confrontations, as soon as you feel or sense that someone's confronting you, there's going to be a jump start of cortisol, maybe adrenaline. The body changes and it reacts to make sure that you're ready. Whereas if you could be conscious enough of this person isn't attacking me, and just that simple awareness alone, you take a deep breath, you get present, and then you respond. Um, but in order to be more attractive, it it's a it's a matter of vibration, it's a matter of frequency. Are you are you perceiving your surroundings and your world from a place of lack, or are you perceiving it from a place of abundance? And that's really important. If there's any entrepreneurs on here, anyone that's a coach or someone who needs to market themselves, people are going to
Yeah, a
be,
growth mindset. Yes.
yeah, yes. Well, if you're trying to if you need to speak to somebody that hopefully purchase one of your services, they could feel when you're coming from a place of, oh, I need this client, I need to make this sale, versus I've got everything that I need and I just want to share this with you. So always coming from that place of I have more than I need, not from a place of lack. I want to be of service. And it's such a subtle difference of I need this versus I have everything I need, that elicits a different feeling in somebody else, whether it's conscious or not.
Yeah. I can't believe that we actually covered, 30 minutes or so or plus just talking about social cues. It's unfathomable, I think, in my mind. And it was a great opening. Uh, how do you say it? I forgot. Opening, not the not shot, but not the opening shot. But okay, it doesn't matter. It's a great opening for our podcast for first episode. And do you have something to say for the audience or any sort of insights that you've gained in our last 1 minute?
Yeah, yeah. I just said this to someone yesterday, and I felt so cliche, but just be yourself.
Mm,
Understand, you have to understand what being yourself means first to truly truly interpret that, but your best bet is always to just be yourself, and whoever is ready to receive you and respond to you and interact with you will.
yeah, that's awesome. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in. Can you say goodbye to the audience, Eric?
Goodbye. Take care.
Goodbye. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.